whenever they try to develop technology and use it in a way like that's going to alleviate suffering, then we have to be very careful and have the conversation of, well, what are the boundaries? I had a great conversation with Laura. She works in the parish office, and we were talking about the Rogan, one of them, is it the recent or one of the most recent Rogan episodes? He interviews a guy that had the Neuralink.
Oh yeah, I started to watch it. I didn't see the whole thing.
I started watching it, and then I didn't find it that engaging of a conversation.
Myself, yeah.
So I tuned it off. But she and I were talking about it, and it just got me thinking about, like, where do we draw lines when it comes to what we can do with medical technology? Yeah. This is coming out of left field. You're not even talking about
it's funny because I watched it, so I've been thinking about it. And that comes.
It's just fresh in my mind. So
AI is the next thing too.
AI is the next.
It's all
thing.
connected.
But whenever I hear that, like, I love tech, and I love the advances in technology. Like, the stuff that you can do is just amazing, and it's just going to get exponentially faster.
Yeah.
And so, but where do we draw the line? Because that development is happening faster than the conversations of
ethics.
What should we do? What can't we do? What can't we do? What shouldn't we do? Right? Because those are 4 different levels of gradation.
Yeah.
And it's just fascinating to me. Like, would you get the Neuralink? Like, let's say it was safe. They've tested on other people.
I know.
Would you do
Katie
it?
and I have talked about this, but we got to also remember where technology first came into place. Techne from the Old Testament. That knowledge came from the fallen angels.
Okay, before you start breaking down words, Bobby, would you do it?
But it would all depend. Like this guy who got it he's quadriplegic.
Yeah.
He's using it to move. Like he can move like his stuff. Like, but something in his spinal cord is stopping it actually from his limbs from working. But he still gets those sensations. He can still use his brain to send the message, but the spinal cord isn't sending it to his extremities. Yeah. So he's using it to move cursors and stuff like that. It's supposed to help people who are blind to see stuff like that. It's like, yes, but if we don't put in those guardrails, then it'll be turned into.
Still didn't answer my question.
So it would depend. Like if I'm just me, just to be an enhanced human, we're basically already Neuralinked. We don't have to put in our brain, it's in our hands. So we really don't need to be in our brain. I don't need it that fast to do that. So I wouldn't put anything in my brain. But if I was...
It's tempting.
But if I was paralyzed...
That's how they get you.
If I was paralyzed and it can help me to try to walk
Let's
again.
say, no, but you, the way you are...
If I didn't have kids, I don't know. It would turn me into like Limitless, like the movie, and I would be able to do all kinds of crazy things. Yeah,
could you imagine like having instant recall to all information that we have access to?
Yes, but that's a Luciferian pride. We have to watch out because it's trying to take. There's a line there. It's just it's one thing I think for medical advances to save life. That's like saying, you know, those take you off of life support at the end of life and all those kinds of these moral and ethical questions about how much, how far, what should we do.
Is it Luciferian pride though? I mean, because I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
So I'll start the conversation by saying like I would not get it.
Yes.
And I can go into why I wouldn't get it. But to play devil's advocate, is it about pride or is it like we can advance our capacities as individuals and why not do that?
Well,
where is the downside to doing that?
But where advancement isn't always material.
Like why do you use a smartphone?
Oh, because I love it. Yeah,
you love it.
Yeah, I do.
And what does it do? It gives you the ability to do.
But everything has a trade-off. So the more time I spend on my cell phone, the less time I spend with my family. The more time I use it to acquire wealth and those things.
All the more reason for you to get the link, the chip in your head.
Yeah, but then it would be all the time. I'd be on my phone 24/7.
You're not on your phone though. Now it's just you're processing at a higher level.
But how much is my actual thought? How much is actually coming from me if it's not being, literally I'm being like a spirit from without, it's not God that's driving me. It's an algorithm. It's somebody else who's controlling the buttons. It's not the Holy Spirit that's guiding me. At this point, it's technology. It's in my brain. So
is it though, or is it you? Like, okay, so
the technology's coming.
The way you function, let's say on a very basic level, if we're going to just give a working scenario, I have been able to input all these data points throughout my life, through experience, through learning, and they're in there somewhere. And me, whenever I try to form or create, right, when I'm creative, I'm trying to form a thought, articulate an idea, I'm tapping into that database. what this Neuralink chip can do is it increases that database in terms of data points, and it gives you more direct access to it. So you don't have that feeling of like, oh, wait, I knew that thing. What was that? What was the name of that movie? What was the name of that actor? What was the name of that? So it just, that bandwidth boost, it's not, let's say in that scenario, it's not distracting you. It's not like this where my kid's talking to me and my face is buried in my phone. That is not a good thing. I think we all agree on that. But imagine trying to like boost that highway in your brain.
I try to do that on a regular basis. So if it would be easier, I mean, I'm reading like 6 books right now, but I wish I could remember all of them. Those people who have those photographic memories.
There's so much like biohacking happening.
Yes.
Like, you get sun first thing in the morning, avoid these kinds of foods. Creatine is a nootropic. Yep. All these nootropics on the market that are trying to stimulate brain function. Yep. Why not? Like, why is the chip any different?
Well, it's just who made the chip, like who's helping feed that information. Can you really trust it?
That's why I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I just couldn't trust it because it's easily, just like the algorithms that we see on the phones, right?
Yeah. Like
Google, we think that that's the whole wide web. It's like everything. But like, no, it's curated. It's like there's certain people who get pushed up to the top first page.
That's what we're seeing with
how many people move off the first page?
Yeah.
Not many people. So who makes it to the first page? How many people
scroll like midway through the first page? It's like the first 3 to 6 results
are sponsored. It says sponsored.
Well, now they are. When Google was first a thing, it was just curated search results. Now you got to get through a layer of like, this is sponsored stuff. This is stuff you might want to buy. These are locations nearby. And then it's like, these are the organic.
So who's going to feed those things? Who's going to say that that's necessarily in my memory? But I think that's more of an existential
That's what
question.
scares me.
Yeah.
Because software works 2 ways. If I can have access to information, then somebody can have access to me.
That's it.
And that's the criticism of AI. Like when Google rolled out their AI, and you would type in a prompt for like, give me an image of George Washington, everybody was black. Like who's feeding the AI and populating these language models, which is then going to be downloaded into the chip that's in my brain? That's the scary part. I don't necessarily distrust the hardware. I distrust the person on the other end of the software who's populating it.
Yeah, and I think that all these advantages and advancements, if we're not advancing our character, then it's useless. It's like if you can just have more knowledge, but we're not having wisdom. It can let you recall those things, but if we don't have it formed to how we know what to do with that information, those are 2 different things. That'll help you make, to know a bunch of points, but it's not going to help you make an informed decision on how to act on that information.
Those are 2 different questions.
That's what I'm saying. Because, but if you're not formed in prudence and wisdom in the Bible and by the Holy Spirit, you can have all the information that you want as fast at your fingertips. But if you're going to do wrong with it, it's not going to help. So at the end of the day, I'd rather have that formed more, because then you don't need as much information. A lot of times what we need isn't more information.
But it would make you better at your job.
Not
necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Oh, it would.
Sometimes there's too many options.
Imagine you're sitting in a meeting.
Yeah, but there's also
too many
options.
Let's say you're a doctor.
Yeah.
And you're trying to diagnose a patient. And what do a lot of doctors? I mean, I've got family in the medical profession.
Yeah.
They'll have the conversation with the patient. And excuse me, I'll be right back. They're going back to their computers and they're looking stuff up, right? They're using the resources at their disposal. Imagine if you didn't have to do that step where you're sitting there with the patient, you're processing, and you already have the ability to tap into those stores of information instantaneously. That's what we're talking about. Yeah. Now, what you do with it, the moral question and how we kind of form ourselves as ethical persons, as moral persons, that's like a secondary conversation.
Yeah, I don't see anyone working on anything to improve those things other than the Bible, working at virtue.
Well, that's where the church is so important. And that's what we're trying to do, is just to help people normalize Catholicism and like this idea of you form your character.
Yeah.
And then that foundation is what you build on. My question is, I'm just so intrigued by this.
Oh yeah, no,
like
it's
Mike
tempting.
Dale, I want to ask.
It's tempting.
Ask the tech guys. Would you guys get Neuralinked?
No.
Dude.
Dale was quick on it, and then
I don't know. It's tempting. But
maybe I'm just like too into sci-fi. But anytime someone talks about AI, all I can think of is that scene in Terminator 2 where he cuts his arm off and is like, "Listen to me very carefully." Like that's all I can think of. It's just like. But the Neuralink stuff, like that just sounds.
It's just starting. So we'll see what it does in 5 years.
Yeah.
Because it's a little too early, but like I don't know. It's intriguing, and like you guys stated, a lot of that would be crazy cool. There's like instant recall, be able to do stuff without even. But yeah, it is a little sketchy. I mean, they could. What if they flipped a switch and everybody's just?
That's the thing.
Exactly. Like whoever's controlling whatever. Like
that's the weird thing that I can't. I don't think I'd be able to push past that. So I think I'd say no.
Or I think of like the sleeper cells where like you say a
Manchurian Candidate or something.
Yeah, like you say like a phrase and they like activate. It's just like I don't trust it. I don't trust humans with it.
But there needs to be more human trial, I think, to really. This first guy, which I've seen, he's playing video games with his mind. He's playing Call of Duty.
So are we going to have two different because this is happening.
Yeah.
It sounds science fiction, but so was the smartphone. Heck, my dad tells me stories about when they went to Epcot in the 70s and the 80s, and they saw they had a fax machine on display. And their mind was blown that you could send a piece of paper through this machine here, and then halfway across the world.
It's crazy.
How do you even use them?
And now I had to, I needed one of the office ladies to show me how to use the fax. I was like, what do you do with this thing?
I can't believe people are still using them.
So, but it's all science fiction, but it's real and it's happening. And so, yeah, we're going to have these conversations, or else we're going to end up with two classes of people: the class that has it and who has the advantages of it, and us normal folk who are walking around unchipped, still checking our smartphones.
You're going to call that the mark of the beast? Is that the mark of the beast?
Tell me you don't think about that.
Yeah, that might be it.
This just
For anybody who knows their Bible, tell me that's not the closest thing to the mark of the beast that we've developed. This idea of it's literally in our brain.
The vaccines, what people were trying to say? It's the vaccine is the mark of the beast.
Really? Were they? I didn't hear that thing, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Well, it's just one of those, it's a temptation. At the end of the day.
The mark of the beast is it's the way it's described in scriptures, like it's on somebody's head.
Yeah.
So this is literally in somebody, like it's in your head.
In your head. But like I said, go back to my original point that techne in the Old Testament, it comes from the fallen angels. Like the demons were the ones who taught Tubal-Cain the weapons of war, gave him how to do metallurgy and how to make medicines and how to do all those things. It's taking these things and warping it, what his original intent was for. So it's like, that's why the Pope has talked about it at G7. He talked about the importance of humans intervening and not waiting until it's too late to step in with AI, and it's going to be Skynet and it's way too late before we actually talk about it. The only one who's ringing the bell is Elon Musk, even though he's putting in people's brains.
It's funny because he's
putting in people's brains, but I see it that what he's using it for now is very beneficial. To help people who are blind to see again, to do the things that they've been taken away from them, or to help them live, or things like that. That's different than using it just so I can be smarter.
Here's where I get skeptical though, because they always they lead with a kind of a charitable. What's the word I'm looking for?
Benevolent.
Benevolent, yeah. It's always like a benevolent cause, or even if it's not benevolent, then it's something that's cool and attractive. So an example could be like when Google Maps first came out, and the fact that I could look up I remember doing this with my family. Yeah. You look up your house, oh, there's our car, and there's our, you try to figure out when they took the picture. And it was so cool at the time. Or when Ring doorbells were really hot, it was like, oh yeah, I could see from my couch. But now what's happening?
You woke up in 1984?
Yeah, I feel like I'm under surveillance all the time. You got to really worry about. Now people got dash cams, they got the doorbells on the houses.
Everything is being.
We're under constant surveillance, and we've kind of built the prison around ourselves. Nobody forced us to get the doorbells.
It just feels so dystopic and so just if we're using it, like you said, to help blind people see, if we're using it to help people who are at a disadvantage, rather than just giving your average person an extra advantage, that's just, at that point it's just you're just having fun, you're not doing anything helpful.
Well, you ever seen the movie Ready Player One?
No.
Well, that's what we're getting close to that now, where everybody it's a lot of mostly poor people living in junkyards, and these people every day, they live their lives on a headset and they play in video games, and they already have those mats. Like you could walk in any direction. I know Rogan talks about that. They got these warehouses where you go where they have like, you're fighting zombies and you're wearing this. Like that's how people are going to end up living their lives in that. And that's going back to the dystopian thing, is that America right now is a combination of both 1984 and Brave New World. Brave New World isn't
1984 for those that don't know.
From Orwell.
Yeah,
George Orwell, which is like a surveillance state. And Brave New World is more of like everyone's doped, everyone's on these drugs, and you know there's no like urge to want to be better. Everyone's in their own kind of caste, and it's just like that's what everyone's doing now. It's like everyone's on pharmaceutical drugs, or drinking too much, or doing drugs, or gambling, or just paying attention to sports. They're also like apathetic to everything that's going around them. It's like we get a combination of both. Like we're being told that freedom is slavery. We're being told that things are opposite now. It's like if you want to worship God, then you're trying to impose your religion on someone else, or you know, things like this. So it's like we have to watch out. There's a third dystopian book that I really like, and it's Catholic, called Lord of the World, where it talks about how it even sets up the Antichrist coming in. But that's why these stories are popular, because the world feels like that right now. Like every show right now is about bomb shelters, like the fallout, or computers in your brain. Like there's so many shows that are all about this right now. And is it because that's what we're thinking about, or because that's what's on the horizon? I mean, it's the Pope's even talking about the AI. It's like, that's a big deal. It's like where it got to the Pope. Like, I mean, what does he know about computers, really? Probably not a whole lot. I mean, he probably has people do everything for him.
You know, and that's where I keep going back to, like, they seem like they're far off distant things, or they're not going to touch us. But the reality is technology has gotten so advanced in the age that we live in, and it's only going to exponentially get more advanced as it develops, that it's going to touch each life. Whether it used to be, if you were in the urban areas, you kind of would feel the impact a lot quicker as developments were rolled out, whether it's industrialization or, you know, developments in technology. If you were in the rural parts of the country, not so much. I mean, even my dad growing up in Jordan, if you're in the cities, it was one experience of life. But then once you went out into the countryside, I mean, those guys in Jordan, it's like you would think they were living at the time of Noah. I mean, just no running water, no plumbing, no nothing. And this is just a generation ago. Now it touches everybody. Now everybody, because it's so accessible, is able to be impacted by these developments. And so you got to think about it. I mean, so like this dystopian thing, it's like, I'm waiting for Apple Vision. Like I'm waiting for those to become, I want to try one out. They look so cool.
Like not that expensive.
Yeah. When it's not $5,000 and it's like $500,
Yeah, it is.
like the cost,
Yeah.
it's going to be that.
But at the same time, you also have a resurgence of people who are disconnecting, who want to homestead. I know a lot of people who are like, want to go buy land. They want to get away from everything. They want to disconnect. They want to raise their own food.
Was it Leah Lebsko? She had posted, it was a survey done that teenagers are saying they'd love to be able to disconnect from TikTok, but they could only do it if everyone else did it. Because they would feel left out. And that's how they get you again.
And that's this with this chip. If everybody's doing it, I'm at a disadvantage. Why can't I have it? But yeah, that Jonathan Haidt talks about that too, that in school, the kids would like to not have their phones in school. But if there's one kid who has their phone, then they're texting, they know what's going on, then they feel like they're left out or they're not in the group. But if everyone didn't have it, that's okay. So no, I get it. But if everyone's running off a cliff, I want to be the one saying, wait.
Yeah.
I don't know. I took Facebook and Instagram off my phone. I feel like a much
happier person, I bet.
You did that a while ago too. So I mean,
it's been a couple years now actually. So
it makes it a lot easier. I'm sure. I know, because it does. But you don't think if it's in your brain that it's going to be 1,000 times worse. That if you're going to be flooded with so much information, there's still, at the end of the day, it's not going to make your processor faster in your head. It may be able to do that, but how is it going to make it like work faster in your brain in real time? That's the idea behind it. That eventually your processing ability is increased in theory. But is it more of like you could pull up?
We're still dealing with the first generation of this thing. But when you've got Elon who's spearheading Neuralink,
but the problem
you'll be able to communicate without speaking.
Did you hear the part though? What he said, what the problem was with the first implant is that they put these probes all in your brain, and they keep falling off because they didn't realize how much the brain actually moves. the brain pulsates at the same rate that your heart does. It literally moves, and it's anywhere between 1 millimeter and like 3 millimeters, depending on it. So now they're doing these tests because this is groundbreaking stuff. They didn't know exactly how much the brain actually is moving, so they're popping out of the brain. I thought that was interesting. Like, I never heard that the brain pulsates with the heart. I'm like, that's interesting. So there's stuff where, you know, they are going to make these advancements, and we'll see what happens. But just remember, it came originally from the demons. So Techne itself it's trying to control God's world instead of trying to, you know, everything we do, nothing we do is original. Everything, even making children, we procreate, we create with God. Everything that we create is already here. It's not like we made anything new. We took resources that God had already put on this universe and we make good out of that. It's nothing new that we're making. If anything new that got brought here, that some of the information may not be good. Maybe the evil one using it to tear us apart. We have to always remember that. That's been going on from the beginning.
That's a very skeptical view of creation. I don't know if I agree 100%.
How? How so? How is it skeptical?
Because we're creating God's image and likeness.
Yeah.
Both. And so who is God? He's first and foremost the creator.
Yeah.
And the sustainer. And so if we're made in his image and likeness, we too have it within us in our very DNA to create and to sustain. And so that's what he commissions us with.
Yes, we could create, but we don't create all the raw materials are already here. We didn't create any.
That's fine, yeah.
We took something that was already here and made it out of that.
Sure.
We could call that creating, but technically nothing.
That's okay.
There's nothing new. Yeah, we're using what God even.
But I don't see how that's where I disagree. I don't see how that applies
we
to
can use it for good, or we have to watch out because the evil one will make us use it for bad. And
of course.
And that's what happens right away.
And it's not just the evil one. We do stuff for bad, right? Because of our fallen nature, right? We subvert the good that something can be directed towards. Yeah. Like Pope Benedict says, the internet can be a good and use it for good. That's why we're online. That's why we podcast. We want to be able to bring the light of Christ into these spaces. That's great. But again, I want to bring us back to like the foundational question. Would you use this technology?
Not as it is right now. But I'm obsessed with information. So for me, it was like, I would love to have that, but I'm one of the people who would wait and see what would happen. And then maybe depending on what's going on, but I wouldn't be one of the first ones to sign up for sure. Just like with the vaccines, I wasn't signing up for that. I'm like, I want to see, give me some evidence, give me some studies, let me sit back, let me watch. Like, we'll go from there. But
whenever they start saying things like it's going to alleviate suffering, that's when my sirens start going off. Because from a non-Christian perspective, then that argument robs God of his glory. So I'll say that a different way. For people who don't understand the cross, then any attempts to get rid of suffering wholesale is robbing God of the glory that he wishes for himself and the glory that we can have by uniting ourselves to him. And it's an anti-Christian proposition because what does Christ tell us? We'll always have the poor, and in this world, we'll always suffer. And his commission to us is to take up our crosses and follow him with the implicit directive that in this world, we're always going to suffer. And so whenever they try to develop technology, and they being the powers that develop technology, whenever they try to develop technology and use it in a way like that it's going to alleviate suffering, then we have to be very careful and have the conversation of, well, what are the boundaries?
Are they alleviating or are they trying to eliminate it? Because I definitely want anesthesia and stuff like that.
I want anesthesia, but then what about euthanasia?
We're just going to get rid of it all wholesale cloth. Like this culture, we can't do with any suffering. Like if I got a little headache, I got to run get aspirin and get IV. Like I have to have it perfect in my house, the temperature. Like we don't like any discomfort, suffering, like undue suffering. Yeah, we can still unite it, but we shouldn't.
And suffering,
we shouldn't want to look for it. We shouldn't want to look for it. Like I want to suffer, therefore, no.
Suffering isn't good. Suffering is definitely an evil, and it's the byproduct of the sin and the sinful world that we live in. So I'm not saying that it's good. But the only way to truly alleviate and to answer suffering is through the cross and not through technological developments. And that's where I think I get on the same page with you and say it's a Luciferian thwarting of God's plan.
That's Brave New World. That's what's going on in Brave New World. And then there's this character that's not they're not in this, the savage so-called, they're just living a normal life. They come in, they're like, it's like, no, he wants to go back. Like, because it's like, what is going on here? It's like, there's no feeling at all. Then you end up losing all feelings. You lose the joy. Without sadness and suffering, you don't know what joy is. If everything is always going good, you have no reference point. If it's always good, you wouldn't know how good it is. You got to have some ups and downs. That's why we feast and we fast. We go without so we know what it is to have. And when we have, it's good to know what it's like to not have it. If we don't have that bifurcation of it, then it's just every day is just the same. And I'm always going to feel good. It's like, well, then you don't feel as grateful. Like the days I wake up and I feel great, it's like, yes, I should thank God. The days I wake up, feel bad, I should still thank God. But then I'm more grateful for the days I wake up and I feel better. You know, it's just a different perspective.
Yeah.
But that's a good topic. It's, I'm glad I watched, I got bored with it too after about,
no doubt.
After about 20 minutes, I got bored.
I still was thinking about it. So like if we set the Neuralink thing aside, because that's still new technology, and maybe most people aren't really thinking about it yet because it hasn't kind of pervaded the radar of what we're consuming and what we're being bombarded with. But there are things like euthanasia that has always been a conversation.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we talked about it on this show, if it was another conversation. They actually have pods. Was it in Sweden?
Yeah.
And they make them like these really cool, new agey design things where you just get into it and then it just puts you to sleep. And that's it. You can choose to end your life and you should be able to do that. So if you have a terminal illness or not, I saw an article, there was a young lady who she just wants to end her life. Everything's going great. Like she admits everything's great. She's got a boyfriend or a husband and her family, like that's good. Her health's good. But she's like, I've just always wanted to end my life. And this is one way for her to do that. So it's like, again, we have to have the conversation of what can we do? What should we do? What can't we do? What shouldn't we do? And the ability to end your life should be one of those things that we universally agree that that's something you shouldn't do.
Yeah. And some people obviously suffer from mental illness and have suicidal ideations and that's normal. They don't have to go into a pod to do it. People are struggling right now. We're living in this culture of death. And if everything's not going my way, it's like, I need to end my life. It's like we have whole generations of kids that think that if they don't get their way, people are being mean to them. Like that's how the kids describe it now. It's like, my daughter doesn't go, she wants like, well, he's being mean to me. I'm like, because he didn't give you what you want, that's being mean to you. It's like, yeah. And if my life isn't going perfect, someone else is to blame or I should end it early. But how much of this is going on because God has left the square? You know, it's like, how much are people suffering? They feel so isolated. They have a crisis of not just quiet lives of desperation, but quiet lives of like their soul is in such disarray that they've been lied to for so long. That's
where I love the wisdom of Christ and the church. Jesus gives us the saints. The world gives us superheroes.
Yeah.
And they're a pale image of what the greatness of the individual can be. Like I was a really early Marvels fan. Now I dropped them after what was the end of the saga, Infinity War or Endgame.
Endgame, yeah.
Yeah, once that was done, I was done. Disney went off a cliff.
And then they just wanted to keep going.
Yeah.
Well, they just had it do you see the James O'Keefe? They just released the video from Disney. They got one of the VPs talking about it.
They won't hire a white guy.
Yeah, they have it on camera, him talking about it. Well, if that's the end point, instead of making...
Sucks for you guys, Disney, if you want to hire me.
Yeah.
I'll be CEO. We'll turn the ship around.
Yeah. It's just like, well, do you want to make good stories or you want to jam propaganda? It's like, well, good stories have an arc and all the best stories are Jesus' story in some way or another. It's like, okay, you know, we know from the Rescue Project created, there's a fall and then there's a restoration. Like that's the hero's journey. That's the arc that people love.
So yeah, where I was going with the superhero thing, it's like we look to these fictitious characters and we get entertainment out of them, but it's fleeting entertainment.
Yeah.
But with the saints, and so like who comes to mind when we're talking about suffering? John Paul II. John Paul II suffered the last couple years of his life publicly. And it was one of his requests when he started suffering and experiencing the outwardly the symptoms of his Parkinson's and dementia. They wanted to kind of like close rank around him. And he wanted to be out more. He wanted to be photographed more. He wanted to be on display more. and people were saying, well, Holy Father, you should step down, you should step aside. And he didn't want to do that because he realized that he was put in a position where he had this global platform to be able to show people what it means to suffer and to suffer with dignity.
Yeah.
And you can say what you want about John Paul II. The ability to do that and to do it so that we can learn from him, that's what the saints do.
Yeah.
They're living examples of what it is that we ought to strive for in this life. Doesn't mean that, we're not Tony Stark. Again, entertaining, but in reality, we're called to be like a John Paul II, like a Blessed Carlos, like a Blessed, Saint Mother Teresa, like all these saints that we can tease examples out of their lives and try to imitate in our own life. And so when I look at things like suffering, I don't want suffering. I don't invite suffering. You pray for help. You pray for God's will to be done. But if that cross is kind of thrust on your shoulders, then you could either kind of like recoil, oh, woe is me, or you can accept it and by God's grace kind of overcome it and use it in a redemptive way.
If you could be any superhero, who would it be?
If I could be any superhero.
Superman, Batman, Iron Man, Captain America. Father Mike does a good thing about it, like explaining it, like how it's to our faith.
Yeah.
Captain America is the most kind of like a Christian because the super serum's like baptism or something. I forgot it. It was pretty good.
Who would you be?
I would be Superman, of course, but
I thought you were going to go with Catwoman.
Catwoman? Yeah. No, Miss Marvel, or what's her name? Captain Marvel. Yeah. No. Or Hulk, can't die, can't be defeated.
Hulk can't die?
Pretty sure, right? Isn't that the...
I think so.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, it happened in both... There's a part in the Avengers, the first one, where he says, like, I tried to kill myself, but, the Hulk spit the bullet out. And it's like, I think that happens in the comics, too. So, yeah, maybe he is just...
Okay, he's eternal. Yeah, I don't know who I'd be.
That's why I asked. Put you on the spot. All right, if you could be any saint, who would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. If I could be any saint, I'd be myself.
Oh, you're stupid. You're stupid.
Best version of myself.
Yeah, be the best version, yeah.
Oh, whose saint story do I love? I love St. Paul's story. That's probably the one I resonate the most with.
Probably St. Peter. That's usually me putting my foot in my mouth.
Yeah. St. Paul did a good bit of that too.
Yeah, right? Yeah. That's interesting because they're both so influential, but both so different, but also same, at the same time. Like, they beefed in the Bible. It's like, well, what, Paul was more educated and Peter was the fisherman, but God gave them both. And it goes back to the Neuralink thing. It's like, well, if God didn't give us those gifts, it's for a reason. He gave other people different gifts. And just because you have intellect doesn't mean you're less of a person at the end of your life when you're accomplishing things. It isn't how much money you made. It's going to be what kind of person were you? How much were you like Jesus? And you don't need any money. You don't need any smarts. A lot of the saints were people who weren't that bright, were people like Brother Lawrence's book where someone was just washing dishes and being a porter and taking care of people, Mother Teresa being with people when they're dying. She didn't, she said to be successful, it's better to be faithful. That's what we're called to be. It doesn't mean that we need stuff or be so smart to be able to do those things. I should be praying for not a Neuralink, but more for a neurosoul. There we go. That's what I want. I want the grace, baby. I want the imprint of grace.
Well, they were very bright, just not in conventional ways.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? They shone the light of Christ in ways that we admire and try to imitate.
Yeah.
So we were talking also about, you want to switch gears?
Sure.
Yeah.
You ever drive stick shift?
I did. It didn't work out for me.
No.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it didn't work. I'll take automatic.
You burned a clutch?
I'm more of a technology guy. Car jumps a little too much.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's...
Khalil, the more technology does for you, the less you do for yourself.
That's what they say.
So they say. What's on your mind, Bobby? What have you been thinking about lately? Because I got a topic, but let's...
Well, I was...
in the mind of Bob.
Well, figure when this is coming up, I've been thinking a lot about America. To be honest, 4th of July, by the time this comes out, it'll be on the 28th.
America or America?
America with a no A with the apostrophe M.
Yeah, let's see.
But yeah, on Friday, this will come out. That'll be the 28th. We're actually having a 4th of July party we have every year. We have the fireworks that are
On the 4th?
No, on the 28th when this comes
Oh,
out.
on the 28th. Okay.
No, the 4th, I will be at St. John the Evangelist for the Mass with the Bishop and the drone show that Dale had referenced and the fireworks. So, no, I will be there for that. But Katie and I just watched a documentary or kind of film that came out from Mike Rowe. It's called Something to Stand For. We got a sneak preview of it. And he weaves like these 9 stories about all these different diverse characters about America. But I think what I've been thinking about is like multiculturalism, about how that's good about America, but there has to be something that's uniting everybody, that everybody, like in the church, it's the same thing. Like, yeah, your family comes from Jordan, mine comes from originally from Scandinavia or these different things, and everyone brings something unique to it. But if there isn't something that's uniting us, then we're just in our tribes arguing. That it's important to have nations, and it's to have like one nation under God, obviously. But I've been thinking a lot about the American experiment and about how how America was able to accomplish so much in such a little amount of time, but why it's still important to have something unifying us. Like the Declaration was, these inalienable rights were all created by the Creator and things like that. So I've just been thinking about how blessed we are, and that if we let it go, it's gonna be a shame, because all, empires have fallen. It's like, why is America impervious to that? So what can we do as Catholics to try to unite the country? We're so divided between Republican and Democrat, especially in this election year. It's just like, I'm bored of it already, but we still have to be involved. So how can we move the country forward? Those are the kind of things I've been thinking about. Yeah. I'm reading a book right now called The Devil of Unrest by Eric Larson, which is about the start of the Civil War and the attack on Fort Sumter. I'm only a few chapters in, but about Abraham Lincoln and all these different things. It's like, well, we've been to this place before and it didn't end up well. It was like 600,000 Americans died. So it's like, how can we avoid these things that are taking place right now? Like you hear that on the news all the time. Civil war, there's going to be a civil war. It's civil war. Like you hear it all the time. So what are we doing as Catholics to say, no, we're still brothers and sisters. You may be on this side of the aisle. I may be on this. You may be for this and I'm for that. But we are still Americans. We're still Christians. We're still brothers and sisters. So trying to do that how can I do that on my part? Because I'm not a politician. I'm just a dad. I'm, a podcaster and stuff like that. But what am I doing to try to bring the unity? Because that's ultimately what God wants. It's
one of those topics that, again, it's a huge topic. It's a huge topic. And then you get, as you think on it, you're like, well, how can I even make a dent? Yeah. Because it feels so much bigger than me.
Well, patriotism, I think, has been a bad word. I don't think patriotism is bad. And Fulton Sheen really talks a lot about it. G.K. Chesterton talks a lot about it. But patriotism doesn't mean that you don't believe that your country's ever done anything wrong. America's done plenty wrong. And Chesterton said something like, I love my mother no matter what, drunk or not. Like, well, no, when your mom's a drunk, you don't love her in that what she's doing those things. We're honest about the things of our past, and to not make those mistakes again. That's why we remember things. So we don't make those mistakes again, not to dwell on it and point fingers and blame other people and play the victim. The reason to do that is like we recall those things so that we put that into place that we'll never make those mistakes again. And we can't hold people in the past accountable for the way that we do things now. That's just not fair. It's like trying to say, like, how they circumcise people with a rock. Like, okay, well, can't judge them for that. Like, that's what they had at the time, and how their morality, like in the Old Testament, they didn't just, it was eye for an eye to first start. It's like they had to start somewhere, and it was like a +1 level of education moving forward. When you talk
about patriotism, it's almost got also like this feeling of an us versus them. And that's why it gets a bad rap. Yeah. Why are we always trying to be us versus them? And I don't know if it's us versus them. It's us just taking pride in who we are and the values that established us and that can unite us. Yeah. And what I love about so what we're doing here in our diocese, and it's actually our associate pastor who's in charge of it. He's been on the show, Father Declan. For those that don't know, the bishops have called for a Eucharistic Revival. And there's a Congress that's happening in Indianapolis this July. And so as a part of that initiative, the Blessed Sacrament has been on pilgrimage from 4 different parts of the country. And the idea is that we're uniting the country, and our Lord is actually traveling along with pilgrims to this Congress. And I love the symbolism. It'll be passing through our diocese on July 4th. And that's what you referenced. The procession towards Indianapolis as it comes through here. What a great image. Like, it's our Lord that gathers us together in a spiritual sense, in a real sense, as brothers and sisters in Him. But then it's also us coming together and celebrating those principles that this country was founded on. And to be able to do both on one day it's really a powerful thing when you think about it, to be able to celebrate our heritage as Americans and to be able to celebrate our faith as Catholics. And so when you ask, like, what is something I can do? I mean, yeah, it's almost like, oh yeah, sure, you're going to start with prayer. Yeah, you got to start with prayer. Pray for the country, pray for the leaders of this country, something that we do at Mass regularly. Pray for those who lead, pray for our Holy Father who leads in the church and for his bishop, for the bishops around him. And then pray for the conversion of ourselves as citizens. And so am I the best neighbor that I can be? Like, do I take pride in my little part of the street that I'm on? And does that become an example for those around me? And so if we could do more of that, and if we can see if we can live out the dictates of Christ to see our neighbors as Christ sees them, and if we see them as though they were another Christ, I mean, imagine just the kind of neighborhoods we would have, the kind of cities and towns we would have. And that's something that we just have to strive for.
It's a lot easier said than done, but like a good example would be like, yeah, you're having a barbecue and you don't know your neighbor next door. Invite them over, like try to get to know them. And when you start to get to know people, it's like those walls fall down.
It's not even that hard to do.
It's not, but
it's not that hard
coming out
to do.
Post-COVID, it's like everyone's so weird and like in their bubbles. And like, that's not.
You know what's weird post-COVID? Switching gears just a little bit off the American thing. Even the exchange of peace at Mass is weird now.
Yeah.
It hasn't.
I go in for it. I don't care.
I do too. But then you get those people that don't extend their hand. So
Fist
it's
bump,
like,
Howie Mandel.
That's been weird post-COVID. Like, COVID has changed that as part of our culture in church, where people are just okay kind of doing the peace sign or just giving you a wave.
I mean, if they're like 10 feet away, okay, I'll do that.
No, I'm talking about the people that are right around you.
I'm like, bring it in. Bring it in. Bring it in, brother. Yeah,
I wave from the desk.
Yes.
Because I'm at the
we give you one of those.
It used to be an actual kiss of peace. Like in the Middle East, they still do that. In the Mediterranean countries, they do kisses on the cheek. Like that's what it used to be. And now it's devolved to like fist bumps and, the peace sign.
And that's why we feel so much like a divided states. If we can't even embrace in church because we're scared of germs, like germs have been around for a long time. Like this isn't something new. Like, oh, we got to be so worried about it. Like, well, like no, what the studies have said that the more germs you get on yourself, the more immune you get. It's like why antibacterial soap isn't like that good as they thought, because you need so much bacteria on your hands. Like it's good for the kids to play in dirt because their bodies start to produce those antibodies that fight off the bigger diseases. It's like the little bit of like a vaccine, what it's supposed to do is that a little bit of that disease helps you get your body to be its immune response to
immunity.
Yeah, so that's
a way for us to get
so we can't use germs to avoid our neighbors as an excuse. It's just an excuse for some people who are already kind of introverts and kind of don't want to get outside their box to kind of just keep their distance as an excuse. But there's nothing new. There's always been the flu. There's always been pneumonia. There's always been common colds aren't going away.
It's just an observation that.
But there still be smart, still wash your hands, don't cough on people, still cover your mouth, like do like normal things. But if you touch someone's hand, then don't maybe put your fingers in your mouth. Go wash your hands after Mass. I mean, there's practical things that you could do. But the patriotism thing, I just think that like there needs to be like an honest dialogue about it, because if we want to celebrate one thing, doesn't mean we're downplaying the past or the other things. It's also that, this experiment of America, it's like, it's the greatest country on earth. And regardless, every country has a past with a lot of stuff in it that they regret. And that's just, we can't just only harp on those things. We shouldn't whitewash those things.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't, just because of those things, I mean, the freedom that we have helped bring across the whole entire world comes with a responsibility at the same time. But at the same time, it's like,
it's crazy that even just sitting here having the conversation, you almost like you second guess what is it that I should be saying and putting online, right? Because we've seen, especially like when in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a push to censor ideas. There's been a push to censor, and cancel was a really popular term for a while. Just cancel people, which is ridiculous. Like, you're just taking away somebody's ability to voice their own opinion. I thought that's what this country and voice their ideas was founded on, going back to like original principles. And so this totally anti-God. I mean, the idea of us being able to think freely and to voice it is a gift that we've been given by our Creator. So the country was formed to support that and to protect that. But with the patriotism conversation, it does feel like now, tying it to technology more than ever, that there has been a prosperity gap and a technology gap between different classes in society. So much so that the top classes it seems to me, and this is just my opinion, it seems to me that the top class doesn't need to have an allegiance to any one particular country because they can afford not to. I mean, when you hear they're jet setting, there's houses in multiple countries. I mean, you look at stuff like all these different global summits that they do, and I mean, they're all just kind of, they're a community unto themselves. And so why should I have just an allegiance with one country? And that's where you see outlets and like the voice boxes for this community is what we're seeing in like corporate media, where it just sows dissension. That's why I turned it off. I mean, I don't go there because all I'm going to hear is partisan talk, and it's talk that just divides. You don't turn on the news to get just an unfiltered, unbiased perspective. It's all opinion points, and opinions have biases. Opinions, right? They speak for one side versus another, and so you've got this kind of this class that can rule and that can speak into legislation and regulation and restriction, and so now they've got enough power that they exert it on outlets, media outlets, and those outlets just further those agendas. And so you just see it trickle down. So for your average person who's just watching, whether it's CNN or Fox or MSNBC or fill in the blank, it kind of brainwashes us to think how they want us to think. And it seems like with the rise of all these different outlets and the tentacles that they've been able to get into the major population, we just become more and more siloed and isolated. And I think that is like, it's a cancer on this idea of patriotism and of taking pride in one's country, community, and town.
Yeah, and I think the phrase that really got demonized, because it obviously came from
what I said, does that make sense?
It makes sense. And it's so much so that the phrase America first has become like almost, that's racist. It's like, well, how is America first racist? It's like, that's a principle in our Catholic faith, is that subsidiarity. So we start first. If America's not strong, how can we help Ukraine or Israel or Gaza? How can we help anybody else if we aren't first strong here? Like, if I'm not first strong with myself, how can I help my wife? If our family, my marriage not good, how can I help my children? If my children aren't good, how can I help my workplace or my block or my city, then my county, then the state, this. I'm like, well, why am I worrying first about what's going on 10,000 miles away when we're 34 trillion in debt and we have people living on the streets and we have these things? So it's like, it's not that I don't care there, but by lifting everybody up here, then we can help lift. We could do both at the same time. But by saying that I'm not worried about the borders in other people's countries, if we're not so worried about what's going on here, it's like we have to also have that thing where we have to first take care of ourselves before we're capable of taking care of other people. If I don't care about anybody else, that what does that say about me? Then that means I'm selfish. I'm not saying that phrase isn't saying that though.
Yeah.
That's saying that if I'm not for myself, who's going to be? Is the UN going to come and help us? Is China going to come help us? No, like, we're helping everybody else. If we're not for myself, who's going to be? But if I'm only for myself, then who am I? That's the difference. It's like, but that's a Catholic principle. subsidiarity. It also goes to the goes to the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, is that let any law go back to the states first, because that's why we have the United States of America. It's not a federal democracy. It's each state has their own laws, their own government, and what's best for people in Indiana are different than what's best for people in Illinois. What's good for people in California, different than people in Texas. And that's what's the greatest thing about this country, is that if you don't like what's going on in California, then you can move from California to Texas or Tennessee or Indiana. And if you don't like what's going on in Indiana, then you can move to Illinois. I don't know why you would, but you could. You know, it's like one of those things where it's like, that's what's great about this. And that's why it should go back first and foremost to like the school board first. Why should Washington at Department of Education be telling the school at St. John what they should be teaching, when the people in the pastoral council or in the local public school, their school board, they know it's best what they want to teach? Why is some bureaucrat 10,000 miles away, 3,000 miles away going to tell us? So that principle, we should always start first what's closest to home. That's church principle. It's solidarity and subsidiarity. And too much so, like subsidiarity has gone out the window. It's like, no, give all the power to the globalists, to the UN. They know what's best for the world. If China's doing it, well, we must do it. If they're doing lockdowns, we should do lockdowns, trying to follow what everyone else is doing. Like, well, no, what's working for this community? Let's do what's best for them. Obviously, when it comes to defense and bigger issues like that. But most of the issues that every person that deals with isn't those issues. It's like, hey, how much money are my groceries? Like, what can I do to make extra money? What can I do for these medical bills? What can I do for, you know, the educational system and the school in my neighborhood? Those are the things that people worry about. What about the pothole in the street? You know, that's why I love Chesterton so much, because he's so commonsensical. He's like, I want to keep my politicians as close as possible so I can kick them when necessary, because that's how you get things done. When you just give your power to bureaucrats far away, they don't listen to you and they don't care. So that's why more of the power should be closer to us, so that we can have influence in a real way. That's how we affect change, is trying to affect it locally first before I'm going to run for Congress or Mr. Smith goes to Washington type stuff. It's like, it's complicated, but that's how we do make change, is doing those things.
It seems like we've lost that sense of responsibility, though.
And there's nothing different. And freedom and responsibility go hand in hand.
Yeah. But we've lost it. We've lost that sense of responsibility, and that's why we feel like we're losing freedoms. Yeah. There's almost like, I almost feel, and it's not something that's in the front of my mind, but it's definitely there. There's almost like this sense of impending disaster.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just waiting for something to like pop off.
World War III?
Whatever it is, whether it's not, I mean, and it's so crazy that, like, if something's happening in Australia, why is it all over my news feed?
Yeah.
You know, they're talking about avian flus that are hitting Australia. Okay, you know what? Let them take care of it. It's great that I know. I can pray about it. But like you said, what's going on here? What can we do here to make ourselves stronger, to make ourselves better, to make ourselves healthy so that we can help? And it's like, you just have this sense, especially because it is election year and they've become so turbulent in the last couple cycles. It's like you just have this sense that something's going to happen. Yeah. You just don't know when, and you don't know what.
Well, there's a big difference too, I think, between freedom and liberty. You know, freedom to every American now is free to do whatever I want to do, versus like what St. John Paul II said is freedom is doing what we ought to do, not what we can do or what I feel like doing. But that's what that freedom comes, that responsibility. And we're starting to see resurgence for it. A lot of people are talking about it, like, you know, freedom comes with responsibility, and that's part of what our purpose is, you know, for me and my family.
Cardinal George used to use the analogy, he's the former Archbishop Cardinal of Chicago, like, you're free to drive, but you need a license. You're free to drive, but you do so responsibly. You're free to drive, but you have to obey the speed limit. Like, there's parameters, and those parameters are an exercise in responsibility.
Yeah. And they're necessary, just like racing our kids.
It's not a license to do whatever you want.
But I think in this generation especially, is that they look at any of those constraints on their freedom as like tyrannical. But freedom is always ordered.
Who's they?
Well, just like, for example, my children, like, I'm so strict because I have rules. No cell phone to high school. Well, you're so mean. You're so whatever. My daughter wants to tell me, because all of her friends have cell phones. So she feels left out, because like we talked about earlier, if their friends didn't have cell phones, she wouldn't really care. She's too busy playing. So because I put this restraint and this border around her childhood of, I want you to be a child until you get to high school, not focus like your other friends who are always on their phone and doing these things like that, is that looks like I'm being mean. Like parenting now is like if you have rules and you keep to them and you're strict and you care and you love, you just do it with love. You don't say because I do this because I said so, but trying to explain, well, this is why I'm doing it. Like the studies are out, like, hey, it's horrible on your brain and dopamine and all the things that come with it and all these things.
It ties in, Bobby, to
but it gives her freedom to live her life and not be attached to the phone.
They
So
don't
she can be
understand
free.
it though, because you're dad.
Yes.
And again, technology's become so accessible, so pervasive, and everyone's doing it.
Yes.
It's like that TikTok study. They want to give it up, but they won't as long as their friends all have it.
Yeah.
And so your daughter, and it's something I think about with my kids, they're not there yet, but it's like everybody else is doing it. Why can't I do it? Something must be wrong with you.
And you look like the weirdo. Yeah,
Yeah.
look at you. Oh, you Catholics. Oh, you don't listen to bad music and you try to, prevent them from watching things. They're going to put bad images. I was a kid who was able to watch basically whatever I wanted. And it did horrible things to my brain. I literally had to go to the school psychologist because I was watching Jason and Freddy movies and drawing pictures and talking about, like, if you don't think that those images and those things affect your brain, you're wrong. I can tell you they do. I was watching those things when I was a young kid. It's like, because I know better. And like the cell phones have been out for a long time. The studies, there's Jane Twenge. She's got tons and tons of studies about cell phones and development. And Jonathan Haidt, The Anxious Generation, The Anxious Mind is his newest book. Like, it's not good for them. Sorry, I know it helped. There's a lot to do it, but their minds aren't what our minds are. Yeah. I have a hard enough time controlling and knowing I should be eating well. Like, we let our kids choose whatever they want. They pick whatever. Like, I know, and I still don't do it.
You're right. It's whether this is anecdotal, but no matter what side of the argument you're on, you have to see that a tree by its fruits. And you have to be able to see that it's disturbing the mental health, especially of our generation and younger. And it's having more of a disproportionate impact on the younger.
Yes. Because
they're not as formed and they're not as established in character and in their own thought. I remember thinking, like, guns have always been around. We've always had guns. I remember when Columbine happened, it broke the news cycle for weeks. The idea that something like that can happen. Yeah. Now we're so desensitized to that because it happens so regularly. What's changed?
They used to have guns in schools. They used to have rifle classes in school.
Yeah, kids would have shotguns in their trucks.
Yeah. Well, all those kids, broken homes. That was a big part of it. There was never any broken homes in the 50s. Everybody was together. It's like now, you don't have your guns locked up and, mental, most of these kids who did school shootings are on antidepressants or SSRIs and things like that. It's like, we don't know the effects of those kinds of things. But getting back to the freedom thing is like, but at the end of the day, without a fence and a wall, then the kids, there's too much to come in. They don't know how to order their life. When in their young ages, we have to guide them. They don't know what they're doing. They think they do. My daughter's 11. Believe me, she thinks she knows everything. Yeah. She thinks she knows what's best for her, but she could barely write a sentence or a complete paragraph.
So it's good for her to think that way. Like, at that age, you're supposed to think I know better because at that age, it opens you up to take risks.
Yes.
And you're supposed to take risks.
But it's for me to be the parent to say, no, exactly. God put me in charge of you, that I know better, and then you need to trust me.
And you're not looking to be her friend.
That's the problem. Everybody wants to be their friend with the kids. But she's not going to say, you know what, Dad, you're right. High five. Thanks for being a great dad. No, and that's fine. That's fine. But I realized that as I got older. Yeah. My dad was strict, and my dad was the way he was, and he worked a lot, and he did his stuff. But I didn't get the things that I wanted from my dad in certain aspects, but I got other things. But as I grew up and I got older, I loved him. I'm like, hey, you know what? He was that way for this reason, and I love him no matter what, and I forgive him for that because he didn't know any better. And it's like, but I do know better. I've read all the studies. I know what these things are. Like, I'm not going to make those same mistakes. I'm going to try to be, God put me in charge, and I don't need Father's Day cards to say you're the best dad, which everyone gets them anyways. Yeah. I want her to realize when she's 21, 25, she's graduating college. She's like, you know what, Dad, I appreciate you, Mom and Dad. You put these boundaries in here.
Dude, my 4-year-old the other day, this is yesterday, the day before yesterday. He's like, I can't wait until I can be big like you so I can be in charge. I don't want anybody in charge of me. I'm like, dude, you're 4.
They know.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
But you don't want to break their spirit. You want to get it under control. You want to harness it so that they make better decisions. You want them to be good people. So when rubber hits the road and you're not around, that they're going to hear your voice in the back of their heads with their friends saying, hey, let's do drugs or smoke cigarettes or go too fast or drink and drive. I want them to hear Dad's voice in the back of their head say, you know what? my dad told me not to do that. I don't want to get in that car. I don't want to do those things. And then I'll save their life one day. Hopefully that's why we're doing what we're doing. Hey, you know what? On my way to college, my dad would be really mad if I didn't go to mass. You know, I want them to think about those things. And if that makes me be like I'm a tyrant, well, guilty. I'll answer to God for that. But I'm trying to raise them in the faith.
We need portrayals of dads like that in just
not Peter Griffin and Homer Simpson.
We need that on TV. We really do. We need that in shows. Like it's feeding into this disruption and this kind of chaos that we're seeing. I think back like the stuff that I was watching when I was growing up. I mean, okay, Bill Cosby's got that whole situation there.
But the character.
As a TV dad, he was phenomenal. Like I grew up loving Boy Meets World. I mean, Topanga was a cutie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then just like, but the
Mr.
dad,
Feeney.
Alan and Mr. Feeney, what role models? Like they knew when to be tough. They knew when to give. They knew when to, and it's like that was everywhere.
Father Knows Best before that. Yeah.
Father Knows Best, Full House, like so many examples.
Andy Griffin
rattle
show.
Off, step by step. Yeah, Andy Griffin.
But now it's Peter Griffin, Homer Simpson, Modern Family.
Family Ties was great.
You ever watch Modern Family?
I only see the clips. Some of that stuff is funny though.
It is kind of funny, but like the dad, they make him look like goofballs.
Yeah, they make him like a goof. Yeah,
yeah. And
dad doesn't know. You can play on dad.
And it's not just me. It's obviously my wife and I together. We believe the same things, and we're trying to do it. But the boundaries are not bad things. The boundaries are good things. I want to say it's either C.S. Lewis is that when you have a boundary like around an island that's on like a cliff, and if you don't have a fence around it, the kids will never get to the edge because they're so worried about falling off. But once you have a fence, the kids that get real close, then the whole island becomes they can play because they're not worried about falling off. But if there is no fence at all, they don't know what risks they can take. They're still within the system of the boundaries that they have to have the fundamentals down. Okay, you can't do this. You could do this. You can get to the edge and look over and hang on the fence and lean over and do that. Like that's okay. But if there is no fence at all, they won't even try. There won't be any risk. They'll just sit back and just do those. Those things are necessary to have those boundaries because within the boundaries, just like we used the analogy in before, like in a sports game, like those rules and those boundaries are there. Like, no, this is in, this is out. And if everyone's on the same page within those rules, then you're free to throw a change up or a curveball or to do different things within the rules of the game.
The game makes sense and it's more fun.
And that's the way that
so
it's.
So I got to ask you, because I'm really interested to hear your answer here. We got off on a tangent. So how does this all tie back to the country?
So
how does it tie back to America?
Well, father of America, George Washington.
Okay.
So these people, yes, they're not perfect people, but they were guided by principles of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, that we get rights that are not from them.
Yeah.
George Washington could have been a king. They tried to make him king. Who else in his day and age would say, no, I'm going to go back and I'm going to retire back to Virginia and I'm going to let you guys and do this democratic process. They were trying to make him a king. It's like these people might not have been perfect people, but in the time when they were put this country forward, it's like we should be looking at it like, man, what a gift. Like there's no other country in the world that's like this and we should be proud of it still. We should fly the flag. My neighbor's flying the Ukrainian flag, not American flag. There's no other American flags on my block besides my house.
How many American flags do you think are flying in Ukraine?
I don't know.
Maybe one at the embassy?
Do they got dollar bills on them? I mean, that's probably the only, it's like, it's crazy. But, there are pockets where people, but I grew up, my grandfather fought in World War II. Like my dad's very patriotic. Everything had American flag on it. He was all Union guy and like American flag on everything. That's just how I was raised. And I feel like the kids aren't being taught to love their country because it looks bad. You would have
pictures of the president in your house.
Yes. Like my dad was all like America, rah, rah, rah. Like 4th of July was like, we didn't have a bunch of money. It's like, but he'd buy, $20, $30 worth of fireworks. We'd celebrate. Like it was always a big deal. Now it's like, are we celebrating America or are we only thinking about, man, well, there was slavery. Like, yeah, no one's painting over that. But we could still, when it started, the whole world was like that. Like we've come a far way. We fought a civil war. 600,000 Americans died to end that practice. It's like, so where are we at now? And what are we doing to work forward? It's like, do we have anything to celebrate? Like, isn't that what unites us? We're all living in the same country. Like we can celebrate that we're different, but we're the same. That's God. God is 3 persons in one. He's diverse and he's the same at the same time. It's like we can each come with different ethnic foods. You can like doing these things and my family's traditions are this. But at the end of the day, we're all under one flag, one nation, one God.
Mm-hmm.
That's how. America.
Mike, was it on Sunday? Mike's like, yeah, you're from Jordan, aren't you? I'm like, dude, I'm from Munster.
Yeah, we were talking about the heat, and you know, I was just like, yeah, dude, you know, you got that Jordanian blonde. You're from Jordan, and he's like, dude, I'm from Munster.
I'm from Munster, bro.
I'm not used to this heat.
Yeah, that's funny.
Do you guys do the fireworks thing? Like, do you buy fireworks?
So funny story. So we have a big, our whole subdivision has a huge party. So it's on Friday. They shut the whole subdivision down because you can see the Cherville fireworks from our house.
Okay.
So it's awesome. So since this will be our 10th year there already. So 2 years ago or 3 years ago, a buddy of mine, his family owns a fireworks shop. So I gave him a couple $100. He brought a whole pickup truck full, like the big mortars, all that stuff. I'm like, all right, this year I'm gonna do the fireworks. So I set them up like right across the street, like kind of on the corner. And some of them were just getting real close. Like all the women were getting all nervous and with the kids and stuff. And it would just end up being more work than anything. Like I spent like 3 hours lighting fireworks. I was getting other people, and I was like lighting like 6 at a time. Like more, it was way too close. It was just I don't know. I think it's just kind of a waste of money, I guess. But I don't know. It was fun one time, but I will never do it again.
So I don't do fireworks. I mean, I don't even like watching fireworks. So I just
think after you see them, it's like,
yeah.
No,
Dima loves fireworks.
You're not one of those people who takes the videos on it and like, ooh, look, there's fireworks. Like it's something new. Like everyone on 4th of July posts all the fireworks shows.
Dima loves fireworks. I'm not going to spend money on fireworks. It just feels wasteful. If there's a fireworks show and I could see it from my backyard, I'll watch it.
You give the kids sparklers.
But a story that I've got for you.
Have you guys noticed that people have been shooting fireworks off like since like Memorial Day?
Oh,
they just put out, Cherville just put out a thing finally that says that like only from this day to this day, because and it goes like 2-3 weeks after.
It's just like random, like just on a random Thursday.
Well, there's a fireworks stand on every corner and they're cheap. So people just want to.
So Mike, you got to jump in on this. So it's not a fireworks story. We used to have a guy that worked here. And he didn't like fireworks. He liked stuff that would explode, like just make a sound.
Like dynamite.
Like he just wanted to hear it go boom.
Like half sticks and quarter sticks.
I'm going to ask you to jump in on this, but I'm sitting and we're about to have a meeting and these guys walk in, Mike and this other guy. Well, it's Bob. We've had Bob on. Yeah. Flash Bob's photo. You know that face photo? So Mike and Bob walk in. And Mike, you know, in the summer, he wears those sleeveless shirts and his arm is just all scabbed over. It was crazy how bruised you were. Yeah. And he's our sound guy.
Yeah.
And you're talking to Mike and he can't hear out of one ear. And Bob's deaf out of another ear. So tell him what you guys were doing.
Yeah, so this is I don't know, this is 2020, right? Or 2019? It's got to be 2020.
It must have been 4 or 5 years ago.
Summer of 2020. So I was kind of still new, just about 6 months. And yeah, we did this. We were in the church parking lot and Bob pulled out this half stick of dynamite, homemade, mind you. So I'm like, okay. He's like, here, you want to throw it? I was like, yeah, sure. You know, I've messed with fireworks before. And so I threw it and the wick must have been a dud or a short fuse, and as soon as he lit it, it went off. So it came out of my hand, it blew up right there. Me and Bob are both about, you know, this far away from the explosion.
Yeah.
And it was like, you know, those war stories where you're just like, what just happened? Like you hear ringing, like in your ear.
So this is the safety protocols here.
So yeah, I had my motorcycle riding gloves on. The whole thing was torn off. I'm lucky I didn't lose my entire hand. I had shrapnel kind of like
all down your arm.
I still have a scar here. Yeah, and my hearing has not been the same since.
For months, you were complaining that you couldn't hear.
Yeah, it was totally dead. My eardrum ruptured. I went to it was a whole thing. But yeah, dude, I don't have fireworks anymore. That's it. I will never touch a firework again.
Well, this is the safety part. So if you're at home, know that they are dangerous.
Yeah, be careful.
And especially, a lot of people get hurt on the mortars. They stick their heads over it to see if it's going to come out. Like the ones with you light it, you drop it in the tube. Yeah. The ones that you see, and then it doesn't come out, and then they stick their head out.
Oh, that's boom. Yeah.
So that's what you got to watch. So that's what we had. We had tons of those mortars, and like they're like this 2-inch mortar.
That's like gun safety 101. You never point something directly.
Well, usually what happens, most people they're drinking, they're having a good time, they're celebrating USA, and next thing you know, yeah. So kids, be careful out there. This celebrate with freedom with responsibility. Goes back, yeah. So what are you guys up to? You're gonna be at the.
I'm gonna go to the thing on the 4th.
Yeah. The drone should be cool. I was at the drone show for Our Lady Guadalupe. It was super cool. I actually posted a video. I think it got like 1.5 million views.
We're supposed to have about 150 drones, and the owner of this company is Catholic, so they're gonna use drones and it'll be at night to remake like scenes of the Last Supper, to make like the Monstrance, the Blessed Sacrament. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it was cool with they did it with the Rosary, the Blessed Mother. It was cool. Yeah, I posted it. Yeah, I'm excited. I'll be there for sure. It's gonna be like a tailgate or what? What's going on?
Well, it starts at 6. We're live streaming the Mass, so sjeplus.org. And then after that, there's going to be a procession with the Blessed Sacrament. Father Rocky and Relevant Radio are going to be here. So they're doing the Rosary, was it like across the nation?
Rosary across America.
Across America. So that's happening at the shrine. And then once we get down to the shrine, there's going to be the fireworks, drone show, all the 4th of July celebrations, food trucks, all that good stuff. So
awesome.
Yeah, we'll be there.
And it says America like drones and fireworks and hot dogs and cold beer.
I'm going to give me some tacos.
Some tacos.
Celebrate our ethnic diversity.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you could have one food to eat for your whole life, you can only eat one thing. Mine would definitely be tacos.
Really?
What would yours be?
One food.
That's it. You can only eat one thing.
What's with these questions? Superheroes, food.
I was just thinking about it. I'm hungry. I didn't eat lunch yet.
No.
And go for some tacos.
One food for the rest of my life.
That's a tough question.
That is a tough question. I don't know. Maybe it is tacos because you could do a lot.
So diverse. Yeah, you can do a lot. You put different meats, different seasonings. Like pizza is another one.
Let's go with this. We'll end with this one. What will be your last meal?
Ooh. Probably like a 30-ounce filet or something, the biggest steak you could probably get.
You're going to go all out with the sides?
Yeah, probably. Oh, you know what? Rosebud has really good Brussels sprouts. And I don't even like Brussels sprouts. I've never had Brussels sprouts so good. I don't know what they did to them. Like bacon and maple and.
You know, shout out to Little Italy in Dyer. Have you ever had Eat Your Veggies?
No.
They got an appetizer called Eat Your Veggies. It's fire.
Yeah.
It's a mix of Brussels sprouts and eggplant and cauliflower. Good. Oh, so good.
Yeah, you have to make me eat. My wife makes me eat my vegetables. So yeah.
This is the furthest thing from healthy vegetables that you can.
Oh, okay. Well, we actually just had a date night. We went Saturday night to shout out to Prime on the Square. And we had because my daughter now, she's old enough to stay home for a couple hours to watch her younger brother. So we went and had a nice little date night on the Square, and I had a 28-ounce porterhouse and broccoli and twice baked potato. It would be something like that kind of meal with, of course, like a great drink or something.
You know, Demo was sharing there was this thing that was going around because it's hard setting a date night, like making time for it. You got to be super intentional. Really,
we schedule them out. You have to.
You have to, because like I don't remember the last time I had a date night.
That's not good.
It's not good.
Coming from the Catholic couple.
I know it's not good.
Well, you should do it.
But between like the pregnancy and
once every 3 months minimum, baby, but once every other month.
This kid wants to eat every hour and a half, 2 hours.
Well, that's different.
Like it's the season we're in, but like you start feeling it when you kind of get that disconnection from your spouse.
Yes, big time.
Yeah, but the thing that she saw was like, if you're having a hard time scheduling your date nights, let it be on the date of your anniversary. So like we got married on the 2nd, just the 2nd of every month. That's cool. when you do your date night.
And date night doesn't mean you have to go out to a nice fancy dinner. That can be you're just going to go for a nice walk.
Just spending intentional time together.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Like we've been really intentional. What's really been helping us is we've been doing night walks together. And my daughter every time, can I go? Can I go? No. Stay. No, this is a time for your mother and I to sit there and have some meaningful conversation at the end of our day, hold hands. Sometimes we usually bring the dog who gets most of the attention, but we have great conversation. It's not that long, a 10, 15-minute walk,
yeah.
You know, sometimes 20 minutes, but it's like, you'd be surprised, just like everything with our faith, your marriage, your kids, whatever you put into it, you're going to get out. But if you don't put your wife on your calendar, Dima, make him open up that. What are we talking?
You and Katie are... there's definitely similarities, but you guys are so different.
Oh, we're way different on a lot of things.
So what do you guys talk about?
Usually, I mean,
We'll just fly a drone over one.
yeah, usually,
Okay.
usually it's me trying to
Tap
put,
into some of those
is what she
cameras
says
as
is
they
it's
walk
me
by.
always trying to put more things on her plate. So it's usually like, hey, what about this podcast? Let's do this. Let's do that. Those kinds of conversations. Sometimes it's, like house management type stuff and budget and, the what's upcoming.
See, I
Sometimes
don't want
it's
to
how
talk
was your
about
day.
that stuff. Like
Yeah.
that stuff's important to talk
Yeah,
about.
but if we
But,
haven't
like,
talked about
your
it,
identity as a couple
Yeah.
can't become the responsibilities that you share.
no, we got away from it. We were doing like weekly marriage meetings to hammer out those things so then we can have those other more meaningful conversations. But we'll talk about something that we're watching or reading or something that she saw on social media. Like, hey, did you see this video? And then we'll talk about, lately it's been about all the way they're trying to kill us with our diets and foods and plastics and everything. So we're on the same page on chemicals. And speaking of, I saw the video. So Pringles, right?
Oh, I saw that.
You saw that video?
What happened?
They're not actual potato chips. Like to say chips, it has to be potatoes. So what they do is they make all these chemicals, they make into a powder and they smash it together and make the chips. There's zero potatoes in Pringles.
That's why they're so good.
So what is it?
It's like chemicals. So 70% of the American diet right now is ultra processed. Ultra processed literally means that you couldn't just make it in your kitchen.
Yeah.
And Pringles aren't even chips. Think about it. It's crazy.
Well, it's like those drumstick ice creams.
They're not drumsticks?
They're not ice cream.
They're not drumsticks.
Yeah, they're not actual drumsticks. But it's not ice cream. And what does it say? Like, it's like dessert treat or something. Like they can't say it's an ice cream
I
on the
didn't know
box.
that.
Well, because ice cream's actually healthy for you. Like if it's actual like milk, like the stuff that's meant to be, not all the chemicals. And that's part of what it, so yeah, we talked a lot about that on our last walk. Like, the grocery aisles, like just walk on the outside, stay away from the insides. So
That's where all the good stuff is.
well, that's it. I know. But with food, it's only good for about 10 seconds in your mouth. That's the way you have to look at it. Is it worth 2 hours on a treadmill to burn off? So, that's part of the trade-offs.
I don't know. I'm waiting for that Chipotle to open up in town. What's that deal?
You should be doing that anyway, though. Working out.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I know. I'm ready for Chipotle.
I'm ready for that Chipotle.
I do love it. And so, I mean,
Even though that's still bad for you.
it is like after I eat it, it's like never good. Like I like the really hot, the red sauce.
Yeah.
Oh, good luck.
Well, no.
Dude,
they cook
but
with
it tastes
seed
so
They
good.
cook with seed oils.
Yeah.
Like it's still not good for you.
Yeah.
Or like Chick-fil-A is supposed to be God's food. That stuff's terrible for you. You
Close
see how
on
many
Sundays.
ingredients are in those buns and chicken?
So we did we got a cow. So we did a quarter of a cow every like.
Oh, did you guys get that already?
We're on that. We already almost went through the second one already.
Okay.
I eat a lot of meat. So yeah, a quarter of a cow like every 3 or 4 months. So we're about ready to put in an order for the next one. So it just tastes so much different. It's like, like right now when I get home, I'm going to make some sirloin steaks. Not everything has to be
Let
steak.
me
They
know
have
when you do that. I want to go in on that if I can.
Well, you could just get a quarter yourself.
Yeah, let me know where you get it from.
One of a parishioner's family has a farm.
Do they
in
sell
Judson.
like, yeah?
Yeah, it's like, it comes out like less than $4 a pound.
Yeah, I'll do that.
But that's for everything. You get a lot, the ground beef comes in 1 pound
You've told me
packages.
about it before.
You get the ribs and, we like the fajitas. You get, you could tell them, hey, I want more fajitas, less of beef. You get all the roasts. Like every Sunday, we just put, like before we go to mass, we'll just put a roast in the crock pot.
And
with
it comes
vegetables.
vacuum sealed,
Everything comes
like
back.
cut up. You're not getting like a whole loin.
You go to the people at the cow, they take it to the butcher and then you pick it up from the butcher shop.
Nice.
And a quarter of a cow, you basically, all you need is like, I have an extra fridge in the garage, like an old garage fridge, a little bit of space in my freezer in the kitchen, and then the whole freezer and you don't need like a big deep freezer for a quarter of a cow. But I mean, everything's like 90-10. So all the meat, there's like barely any grease in it. You never have to defrost it. You just run it over the hot water. Oh, it's so good. But yeah, we're definitely not going back. I wish we could have chickens and eggs and we'd be straight. Some raw milk.
Can't do that in town.
Can't do it in town. But yeah, those are better conversations. Trying to get healthy, and she's on a 40-hour fast right now. She does about once a month. She does a 40-hour.
Okay.
So she'll be ready for dinner
for her.
tonight. Yeah.
And you got the Blackstone, didn't you, Mike?
Yeah, I just got one for my birthday.
Start growing up on that.
What size? 36 inch?
36 inch, and I've cooked on it probably 10 times.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
How hard is it to clean it afterwards?
All you do is you scrape off any residue, spray the water while it's still warm, let it steam up, scrape it again.
Scrape it again and then wipe it off with a
down
with a
totally,
towel.
And then put your coating of oil back on it and then close it up.
Yep.
It's pretty easy.
So a little tip with that, you season it with oil to start.
Yep.
And then throw some onions on the grill.
That's what I did. The
Yeah.
sulfates and the onion lock in the.
Yeah.
I was studying up like how to properly season.
And then you just toss those onions, you're good to go.
Yep.
I'm a master on that. I did 3 years at Shoop's Hamburgers when I was in high school, which was just a
I
flat
grew up
top.
working in my dad's cheesesteak place.
Oh, so you know how
I'm gonna
to
have to do that.
Yeah, I'll make you
some
some Phillies.
some smash burgers.
I see those Blackstones at Costco all the time. And I'm always like, is today the day?
Dude.
I've been on Marketplace. I'm trying to buy. A lot of people buy them and then never use them.
Yeah.
Marketplace.
You see them on there?
Yeah, they're all over Marketplace.
Are they
They
priced good?
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm looking. I'm waiting for the right one. I want to redo.
See, but with Costco's return policy, I'll just buy it from there. 5 years from now, the leg doesn't work.
doesn't
it's like,
work,
the knob broke.
But you have to take care of it. That's the thing.
Yeah. They're not that hard to take care of.
Yeah.
But I would suggest keeping it indoors. I keep
indoors?
it in my garage. I still have a cover on it and then another cover on it
Yeah.
because I don't want it to get in the elements and rust.
I'm definitely hungry now. 4th of July.
You want to wrap us up in a prayer?
Sure.
Yeah.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Come, Holy Spirit. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this time together. We ask you to bless those who are watching and listening. We ask you to bless our country, our states, our neighborhoods, our families. We ask for a spirit of unity among this country that is very divisive right now. We ask that this 4th of July, a true independence can happen in our hearts. You said that whoever the Son sets free is free indeed. So we ask that freedom that can only come from your Son. We ask this in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
In the Father, Son, Holy
And
Spirit.
St. Thomas More.
Pray for
us. So for those of you that are interested, Bobby and I, after the show, we're going to be talking about some Purposely Catholic merch.
Yes.
See,
I got a couple of people who were
A
like,
couple people requested the hats.
yeah,
We'll see if we can make those available. And that'll all be on sjplus.org for now.
let's do it. Yeah. No, I know. It was like random. Like in one day, like everyone started asking me about them. I'm like, what a better way to spread the faith than say, what do you mean you're purposely Catholic? Well, let me tell you. Here we go.
You can make it happen.
Amen.
God bless.